I knew I wanted to go really big with Interplant. So that was very much aligned with what I wanted to do, and venture was aligned with what I wanted to do. It's not necessarily the right path for everyone, and that's okay.
Coming up, we're talking to the CEO and founder of Interplant, all about raising venture capital, big ideas in agriculture, and why she's actually not very bullish on ag in general. The Modern Acre podcast is presented by Corteva R&D, the research and development engine of Corteva Agriscience. Corteva is a global pure-play agriculture company that combines industry-leading innovation and high-touch customer engagement to deliver solutions for the world's most pressing agriculture challenges. Corteva's global R&D teams are dedicated to advancing science and technology for modern agriculture, tackling challenges like climate resilience, pest and disease pressure, weed resistance, and sustainable productivity. Through world-class research, Corteva R&D is pioneering solutions to shape the future of agriculture. Their robust pipeline is laser-focused on delivering differentiated products and lasting value to help farmers grow and protect their productivity now and in the future. All right, I'm excited to share this conversation with Shelly, the CEO and co-founder of Interplant. Interplant's been around for a few years, and when you first hear about what they do, they develop crops that communicate their needs for more resilient and sustainable farming systems, but they literally communicate via how they look. It sounds like science fiction, and it was fun to talk to Shelly about her journey into ag. And I think what's actually rare on the podcast is she's not necessarily obsessed with ag as an industry and will be a lifer. She's just super passionate about this big idea, this technology that can potentially disrupt agriculture. And frankly, I appreciate the honesty. I think we need more people who understand what they want, where they're going. And on that note, she talks a lot about raising capital and really having that same attitude of knowing what you want, where you're going, and raising the right capital for the job. So I think it's really an enlightening conversation that you guys are going to enjoy. We will jump in with her perspective on AI in agriculture, which is somewhat of a hot take. All right, I want to start with a LinkedIn post you posted the other day about AI in agriculture. It's something that everyone is talking about right now. And you said, here's my take. It doesn't exist. So you got to unpack this one for what do you mean by that?
Yet, I suppose. First of all, I have an issue with anything that sounds like a fad. So obviously we're in an AI bubble. I'm from the Bay Area. I've been here for 15 years at this point. So I know all about the bubbles. Doesn't mean that no value gets created. It's just like all the hype around it is exhausting. So there's this whole concept of everyone now wants to do AI for ag. Like let's just focus on ag now. And then the question is, what exactly are those solutions going to be? And since the day of starting Interplant, which is almost 8 years now, it was always clear that the same problem is there, which is there's no idea of what's happening in the field. There's a ton of variables, and there's one outcome, which is yield. We can't really find information early enough to take action. And that doesn't change if there's a human there. That doesn't, it's the same if you're doing a DVI, if you're walking the fields, if you're taking imagery with whatever satellites, drones. It doesn't matter because the information doesn't exist. And then eventually the question is, AI is not that smart that it's going to create the data for you, right? The model is as good as the data that's entered into the model, and the data doesn't exist. And that's where I get a lot of pushback. No. Chlorophyll fluorescence works. NDVI works. We can tell you underperforming areas of the field. Like, I run this model and it worked on this many times. Or if you just get me samples, if I just manage to sample enough RNA data, I don't know, you call it. But the reality is like none of that works because no one's actually correlated. When is the right time of infection? What is the plant showing in that moment? And then what is the data that you need to collect for that? So the reality is that data source doesn't exist. And how can you build a model if you can't train it on anything?
No, it's super interesting stuff and excited to kind of dig more into it. But before we get in here, Shelly, maybe talk to us a little bit more about your background and what led to you starting Interplant 8 years ago.
I started a couple of companies before Interplant. So actually started, I'm from Israel originally, and I went to the army, and I talk about that now because it was probably one of the best experiences for training me to be a CEO. And then after that, worked in supply chain consulting for a few years. I went to business school at Stanford. So before I did that, I got the opportunity to start my first company, which was a marine construction company in Colombia, building a part of a sewage system for the city of Cartagena, Colombia. And that was a good experience in the sense of just jumping in and figuring out, okay, how do you manage a team? How do you manage a P&L? How do you execute on something? And then post business school, I started a food company. It was a hummus brand. And we're selling 4.5 years into it. We're selling at about 300 stores in the West Coast. And I just really did not like that business. It was a small lifestyle business. And the reality too is there wasn't any strategy to it. So it was like, make the best hummus and the best product always wins. But no, Pepsi always wins because they pay for shelf space. And that was kind of the beginning of Interplant, which is, okay, I wanted to do something that was going to be impactful, that was going to be a technology that could really be a game changer, but also go into it eyes wide open. What does a consolidated industry look like? And how do you penetrate a consolidated industry? Because it's not the best product wins. That's very naive and doesn't work. And it's not my technology is so amazing, someone's going to buy it. Like, it's none of that. But if you can figure out how to generate significant value through something that really is necessary and have a go-to-market strategy that can penetrate an industry like this, then I think that's the winning combination.
So supply chain consulting, hummus brand, a lot of different areas that you have been involved in. I mean, when I first heard about Interplant, and I think this is the common reaction you get, it kind of sounds like sci-fi, So talk to us about, like, where did you hear about this? Like, talk to us about the kind of origins of this technology and the idea behind it.
Yeah, I mean, so I was lucky enough to have no idea, right? I'm a business person with no experience in ag. I came across a biosensor actually from a university professor. This was back in 2017. And for whatever reason, that idea really clicked for me. And I thought, this is super intuitive. There might be something here, just enabling the plants to signal something. And then first thing is started talking to some farmers. There weren't soybean or corn farmers at the time. It was whatever farmers I found in Israel, growing grapes or trees. But it was so intuitive for the farmers. The first thing is like, yeah, we know the plants hold all the information. We just don't know how to get it. Right. And then the next question was, well, this is GMO. And they're like, of course it is. Everything great in ag is GMO. And that was the beginning of it. And then spent some time studying the technology that the university developed, and it was not commercially viable at all. It had this like electrochemical reaction with a clips on the leaf. And it didn't take a lot of time to figure out ag doesn't scale that way. Like, we're talking hundreds of millions of acres with barely any humans involved. So either this is optical or this doesn't exist. And that's how very quickly we landed on fluorescent proteins. There's other mechanisms to do it, but fluorescent proteins are very famous. They've been around for a long time, so they're off patent. There's a lot of data about their safety. And they're like the perfect mechanism because you can do a whole rainbow of problem sequences to solutions, right? Different fluorescent proteins will signal different stresses in the plants. Pretty much after that, I met my co-founder, Rod. And he's the molecular biologist, and he's been the one working at Mendel in the beginning of his career, working on essentially biosensors his entire career. And he just told me, I can do this, and this is what we can do. And from there on, it was all a combination of that. It was building a team that has the right skill set. We have a team of 50. There's no sub-team in it that's bigger than 4 people. We have so many domains, and we just have to keep everything lean. And then figuring out what the customers want, and then figuring out, can we make it? And that combination has been a good combination for us.
Well, Shelly, it looks like you've been able to scale pretty significantly the past couple of years up to over 50,000 acres. You put out a post a couple of weeks ago that for the first time in agriculture's 10,000 year plus history, a farmer was able to identify a fungal infection real time with your technology. Like, how does this work in practice? Like, what was kind of the order operations? Like, how does this work in a real farming example?
Yeah, I mean, that was super exciting. And by the way, one of the farmers was on a interview yesterday. I think it's going to be in farm program. So we're going to get the details out, which is really great. He's experienced in Nebraska. The way our product works, let's start at the beginning. How does Interplant works? And it works with we engineer the crops to signal when they're, for example, infected by fungal pressure. So the idea is the plant activates its immune system. We tap into that and then tell it or teach it how to generate a new signal through fluorescent proteins. Then we can capture that from optical equipment, and you can really do anything from satellites all the way down to a piece of machinery in the field or something that's sitting on the ground. What we look for right now with our first product is fungal infections. And the key with fungal infections is two. One, you want to know as early as possible, right? Because farmers need to make a decision around mid-July, towards the end of July. By R4 for soybeans, it's too late. But the symptoms only come up around beginning to mid-August. So that gap of information is really what we're solving for. The other problem is what disease it is. Because for this year, for example, in Nebraska, what we found is white mold. And with white mold, there are products that work, but they're more expensive. So you really need to know that this is the problem you're going to solve for, or you're going to invest even more and not know if there's going to be an ROI on the fungicides. So at the core of all of it is just taking the guesswork out of fungicides. And then the specific example this year was, and this farmer that I'm talking about, we had an alert in July 11th, and then we had another alert in July 19th that covered a bigger part of our network in Nebraska, alerting farmers that there's a white mold infection in the area. So right now we're running our plots. They're in the area. They're not exactly the plants in the field that the farmers are growing. But the reality is that that gives them an indication that all the conditions are ripe and that infection actually happened. And then these farmers went out and they sprayed for white mold. And we're seeing the data coming back now, and that was the right decision for them. So the reality is that they got a head start that made it valuable. Those symptoms and those plants started to show up around middle of August. And that's really the buffer that we're talking about, is having that information in mid-July where you can still go out and spray, and then preventing the actual symptoms from coming up because you cured, stop the disease from continuing.
It's so cool. And I mean, I think like at its core, this is, early detection. The earlier a grower can understand what's happening with the crop, the faster they can respond, and the minimal impact to yield, cost, et cetera. Shelley, how do you think about, you're clearly creating value in this space. How do you capture that value? How do you actually get paid for creating this value?
Right now with Crop Voice, we charge a fee per acre. It's $6 an acre. And the farmers get the information. And the information comes in basically scouting reports throughout the season. More dense scouting reports in July, because that's really the more critical time frame for soybean farmers. And when we have an infection live in their area, then they get text alerts, or they can get the information through John Deere Op Center, where they can just go and see the alert, what specifically happened. But we provide them the reports because we want to keep providing them information so they can plan, right? Just knowing, okay, there's an infection, go, is not realistic with the logistics of a farm. So we help them understand what's building up towards it, and then we give them the infection to know, okay, it's validated, go do something about it. So that's the model for Crop Voice. I think the evolution of everything is we're working on the regulatory work for our traits to be able to put them in any seed and make them into a commodity trait. And at that point, the farmers can plant them as normal crops. And the nice thing about that is just more data, right? So if right now we have plots every 5 miles or so, and they're a good representation, we're going to move into farmers just having entire fields worth of data. And we do see so much variability that the more you can get down to that plant level, the more you're going to be able to then really treat on the plant level. And that's where the John Deere integration with Seed Spray also comes in, because having the information is one thing. You also want to be able to do that spot application and really only treat the infected areas. And then on top of all of it, we build the foundational kind of AI models, because at the end of the day, there's going to be a massive data model around pathology. And that's when we can start to answer really more long-term questions of how do diseases spread, what makes them go away, because our signal actually goes away when the problem is cured. And then what are all these correlations with weather and other conditions in the field? I think all of this will continue to generate more value that we capture either through the information or we capture through the sale of the seed.
And Shelley, are the seeds treated with something for them to be able to pick up these traits? Is it a specific seed, or is it just your technology on top of existing soybean seed? It's
engineered into the seed. So it's, just like any other trait, you can think about it as a line of code. And once you cross it in, it's in there.
Gotcha. And are there applications? I'm sure you're thinking about other crop categories and like other use cases, like beyond kind of fungal detection. Like, what's kind of the possibilities long term with this technology?
Yeah, corn. Seriously though, soy and corn, just because really, I mean, so many acres, and I think we've got quite a lot of work to capture that. And then we do different stresses. So I have a whole pipeline, biotech pipeline of different stresses of interest: fungus, insects, nematodes, nutrient deficiencies of nitrogen corn. Everyone loves nitrogen corn sensing, at least the concept. The question to us at any point is, what's going to have that economical threshold for the farmer, and then how do they act on the information? Well, drought is a great example. 95% of the crops in the US, soy and corn, are rain fed. So just like having that information is just bad news, and that's not exactly value add on our end, right? So we don't go into things where there's just nothing for the farmers to do. Obviously the world can evolve and the capabilities could evolve for the farmers, but then the information will come with it.
Shelly, this has been quite a journey for you. What has been the biggest challenge you've had to overcome over these past 8 years?
The biggest challenge. There's a lot of, maybe I'll quote some of the VCs from the early days. There's too many dependencies, too many things need to go right. And I'm sure you've read Andreessen Horowitz or whoever, no, only one miracle. So we needed many miracles. We needed the biotech to actually work. We needed the fluorescent signal to actually work and be strong enough. We needed to be specific enough for the diseases. Then we needed all of the detection work to actually, first actually exist and work for us, so all the algorithms. And I've been pretty adamant about satellites because of the scale of soy and corn farming. But then we also need the satellites to exist. The question was, what if you need hyperspectral? Where are those going to come from 5-7 years ago? The answer was they will come, and they did, but like at the time it didn't exist. And then on top of that, there's all the structural challenges in agriculture and the regulatory challenges. So there's just too many things that need to go right. And luckily they all went right? But I don't think it was luck. I think it was just good strategy, and the foundation of the technology was there. But I think a lot of people just didn't like the fact that it wasn't simple. Everyone wants something simple. There's like, put something in the field. But the other thing is, every time we could take the easy route, we refused to, because I'm a big believer that it takes you nowhere, right? So we had a tomato sensor. People told us to commercialize. We didn't want to commercialize something that's too niche. Or, why do you need to have satellites? Just do something, a drone. Well, the unit economics with drones are not there, and they might not get there in 20 years, right? So if you're unwilling to take those easy out, the end product ends up being a lot better for the customer, but you're taking more risk because you're really pushing to get what you wanted to get.
Shelly, want to talk a little bit about kind of funding the business? You had a post in Fast Company recently that VCs should still chase AgTech Cinderellas. I think in AgTech investing right now, it's a little bit flat. There hasn't been a ton of exits. So I think a lot of people are kind of like, the categories challenge. You had kind of an opposite perspective. So maybe just talk us through your thinking there.
My perspective. So from day one, I was getting this, right? Just do something simpler, just do something easier. And I think that's exactly the problem. So it's not the founders and it's not the funders. It's a combination of the two, because founders are coming out with ideas that are too niche. And by that, I mean, it's just a small portion of the value that the farmers need. And if you're going to create a small portion of value, you're going to capture a small portion of their budgets, right? Or you're only treating something that's alongside someone else's infrastructure, and you're never going to be a real game-changing technology in that world. Some add-on, some sensor on the tractor, whatever it is. So the reality is that you have that. And then at the same time, the VCs are saying, well, I don't want very risky propositions, so I'm looking for something small. But the whole problem around that is, one, it's not venture. Right. So that was the whole quote, is like, that exists. There's many funding. No one needs to take venture, by the way. Like, no founder needs to take venture. I think maybe I'll call it out because no one does. The reason we take venture is because we want to have a salary, right? That's a choice. You want to have a salary, you take venture, you can pay yourself, but you're signing up for something. And venture is not opaque. Venture is about, you need to create a massive outcome. And if you can't, then I'm going to take my money to other industries where they can, because I can. The LPs don't care. It's not about ag. It's about the returns. And if you're going to perform less than the S&P, why would I ever want to give you my money? S&P is liquid. I can just do whatever I want. right? So that's the venture route. And if you have a small outcome by design, like for example, most founders come to me and they're like, well, I'm going to sell. You already capped yourself before you even got started. Now you're going to land a lot lower than when you thought. So if you think you're going to be worth 200 million, you're going to be worth 20 million. Who wants that? Right. So the whole premise was the following. You have to swing for the fences. Maybe you make it, maybe you don't. That's fine. That's actually exactly what venture is supposed to be about. But if you try to reduce risk, you're still going to be a risky business because risk is inherent in every business, but you don't have the upside. So you're literally getting all the worst parts of it. And even if you happen to kind of succeed, that success doesn't actually matter to the investors because anyone that has the ability to invest in good companies is going to go where the 100x returns are.
Love
so
it.
Why are we going to change it, right?
Love it. I totally agree with you. I think that I love your thoughts on it because it's not that venture is bad. Just if you take venture, know what it is. And as a founder, you should know what it is because you're I love your 200 million, 20 million example. Like that is so real. I think that's if you're taking venture and hoping for maybe a 200 million exit, that's just not going to resonate with VC where they're looking for a massive exit. So you kind of just have to choose a path and be honest about that path. If the path is venture, then go freaking get after it and go build $1 billion business, and that should be the North Star. And if the business you don't want to build $1 billion business, you don't need to. Just take different financing structures, right?
That's exactly it. And by the way, now when young people that want to found companies come to me, that's usually the first thing I tell them, right? And I told you this in my story. I knew I wanted to go really big with Interplant. So that was very much aligned with what I wanted to do, and venture was aligned with what I wanted to do. It's not necessarily the right path for everyone, and that's okay. The first thing I asked them is, do you want to build something big or do you want to build something smaller? And both are fine. But then you got to finance it correctly because that mismatch and then the just like everyone complaining, I don't understand why they're pushing me. I don't understand why they don't just take lower returns. And it's like, well, why are you even saying this? What's the point of it? It's not what you're supposed to be doing. Anyways, it's people are trying to change the model. It won't be VC. Fine. Then don't let it be VC. But yeah.
I guess on that note, Shelley, where are you at with capital raising now? Where are you at in that process, as much as you can share in terms of, targeting profitability, exit horizon? Fill us in on that.
So we've raised 4 rounds so far. We had our Series B last year. We've kind of taken a little bit of a different turn. Actually, it's funny that I talk about VC, but I also try to get away from VCs. Not because I have a problem with them, because I don't think they understand ag, and I don't think they want to. They don't want to go out to the farm. They don't want to see what it's about. There's certain things about agriculture that you really need to understand in order to be able to support an ag business. So we ended up, our Series A was led by John Deere, and that's a company I am obsessed with. I'm probably one of their biggest fans. They're just a great company, and they've been great partners. And then our last round was led by, maybe Matt Coates, but some of the large farmers, and Matt's on our board. And he's been awesome because working with farmers is amazing, not just as customers, but also as investors. It's the same mindset. It's about just working as partners and making something happen, and the trust and the solidarity. And there's really a lot of that with Matt. So we'll probably do one more round. I don't know exactly when. We have runway, but I think we'll do one more round because we figured out kind of our business model. It works now. And we got to the point where it's okay, we just need to pour some gasoline on the fire because we know it works now. I've been pretty conservative until that point because it's been a lot of science project and just figuring out if it works. And then, do people want to pay for it? Is the demand really there, right? Everyone tells you how amazing the idea is, but when you ask them to pay is when you find out if it's actually amazing. So this has been the year, and we're scaling really rapidly for 26 to see, is the demand there? And then we want to go as fast as possible. And then the plan is to reach profitability within 2-3 years and then IPO after that, because that's always been my goal, or to keep the company private or at least not sell it. It doesn't have to be an IPO per se, but I don't want to sell the company is the point.
Shelley, you've been in the space for a while, and I know you're involved in a lot of different areas outside of Interplant. Like, what areas of ag are interesting and exciting to you? Like, what's getting you excited outside of the day job?
I'm not excited about ag outside of Interplant. I'll be honest. But again, I will say I'm a $1 billion idea, $10 billion idea. Forget about billion. I think that's already in the past, right? Like $10 billion ideas. And there's just not that many in ag. It's really a conservative old school industry. It's not moving super fast. We're not going to create 200% new yield potential for the farmers tomorrow. And without that, you just can't charge more. So I'm not big into ag in general from like other ideas. I love Interplant. If I didn't do Interplant, I wouldn't stay in ag. But I think in general, I would say every industry, there is a few really great big ideas. And I'm a big believer in just like go into a new industry, study it as an outsider, and then figure out what you can do that's really going to be a game changer. So maybe that's not at all answering the question, but
No, I mean, I love the conviction, and it's been cool to see your guys' journey and getting traction, and it'll be fun to follow. Shelley, as we wrap up, how can listeners get in touch and connect with you and Interplant?
I'm very findable on LinkedIn, and our website, interplant.com, is probably the best place. And then we have Twitter, LinkedIn, social media.
I hope you guys enjoyed that conversation with Shelley. I really appreciated her honesty, her candor, thinking about, nothing else in ag is exciting her but her big idea, which I think is really cool. I think there's a lot of things to be excited about in agriculture, but I think it's a really challenging point of let's find things that solve big problems that are going to move the needle in agriculture that's going to really make an impact. And so I think all in all, I think it was a really inspiring conversation. Hope you guys enjoyed it as well. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen or on YouTube, and follow Tim and I on LinkedIn. We're sharing and connecting and networking with people there. Appreciate you guys tuning in.